This ended Napoleon's power on the sea. The cannonades and musket shot ripped apart the ships at point-blank range, killing or wounding nearly 10,000 men. In the fighting that ensued, Admiral Nelson was fatally shot in the spine. He was carried below deck to the ship's surgeon, where he died. His last words were, "Thank God I have done my duty."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here on VCY America. Ladies and gentlemen, in a recent press release received, it spoke of an American College of Surgeons report revealing that over 40% of deceased drivers in motor vehicle crashes over the past 6 months tested positive to THC, the psychoactive component of marijuana. This was from a county in Ohio. And this alarming statistic underscores a persistent and growing public health crisis. And while the study does not specifically indicate the ages of the drivers, previous evidence shows that young adults are disproportionately prone to risky or impaired driving behaviors, particularly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. While there are claims that marijuana is harmless, there are many, many adverse effects that not only impact the user, but children are being impacted as well. Joining us today to talk on this issue, we welcome Dr. Robert Hoffman, Professor of Pediatrics at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and Nationwide Children's Hospital. He did earn his MD from the Ohio State University, completed his pediatric residency at Akron Children's Hospital, and his fellowship at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. Dr. Hoffman is also a member of the Scientific Policy Committee of the American College of Pediatricians and has recently revised an important report entitled Marijuana Use Detrimental to Youth. Dr. Hoffman, thank you for joining us today on Crosstalk.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
Let's first of all define our terms. What exactly is marijuana? Where does it come from? What are the components of marijuana?
Well, marijuana is a plant in the species cannabis and is specifically one that contains a high concentrations of 9-tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the active component, one of the active components.
Okay, and so there are different aspects. Does we hear about oils and so forth? Are there different degrees of this? Where does the oil come in relationship to the plant?
Well, the plant, like most plants, has different fluids and oils and stuff, and you can, like we do with basically cooking oil and stuff, we get the oils out of a canola to create canola oil and cook. You can do the same thing with marijuana and cannabis.
Mm-hmm. So many states have allowed for what is called like the medical use of marijuana. Others have also allowed for what's called recreational use. And I'd like to begin with the medical use. What does the evidence show regarding its use? Is it beneficial?
I think that's really, in a sense, hard to claim. Nothing supports it being beneficial, really, in that the claims that have been done regarding marijuana use have not been, studies that have been done are not anywhere close to the standards that we usually use by the FDA to prove that a drug is medically helpful, which require carefully controlled studies, usually with at least partially blinded results on the basis of the physician and the patient, so that we can truly, and we have measurable outcomes that are objective and with scientific analysis. The studies regarding marijuana and its supposed medical benefits are all the review studies have all shown that they're all very poor, come nowhere close to the standards that the FDA has set. And most of them have shown there's really no support for it. A quote from a review study showed, in clinical trials, the limited availability results do not clearly demonstrate a therapeutic advantage in the use of cannabinoids for several pathologies.
So how then did it get approved? I mean, how is it that it's being used for what is called medical purposes?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are used for quote-unquote medical purposes, that whether it be marijuana or other things that get approved that haven't really met the rigorous standards. We create, we do a lot of things by anecdote. Somebody says, hey, this made me feel better. Hey, this solved that. But not really have the data behind it. We all like the feel-good stories of, hey, I smoke marijuana and my pain from my chemotherapy or my seizures decreased, but that may not be really what happens. It may not be just because one followed the other doesn't mean that the second was the cause of the first.
So you're saying that really the medical use of marijuana then has not gone through a proper vetting process?
Not anywhere close to it. I think there have been attempts by the National Institute of Health and some other organizations to begin to do this, and maybe there will be found in the future. I'm not sure whether it necessarily will be marijuana. A lot of our medications start with plant-based options, but we narrow down not just to the general plant, but to the specific chemical in that plant that has benefit. And it may be that eventually we'll get there, that for certain controls, certain substances in certain areas, that certain parts of marijuana are beneficial. But I think we need to narrow that down, find the specifics, and find out where the benefits really are.
So you're saying we're not there yet?
Not anywhere close.
Yeah. And I saw from your report that there was a trial in Tourette syndrome showed improvement in tic symptoms after 1 week, but in contrast, multiple potential adverse respiratory, cardiovascular, immune, reproductive, psychiatric, and cognitive side effects were reported. I mean, that's, what kind of trade-off is that?
Well, probably not one most of us would be willing to make. I will acknowledge that every medicine we have, as evidenced by the commercials you see on TV, always lists a list of side effects. There's nothing without risk-benefit ratio in this world. But certainly, for a minor decrease in tick frequency, the side effects probably aren't there, and maybe we can reduce, again, maybe if it is beneficial, this may be a hint that maybe there is something in marijuana that's beneficial for Tourette syndrome, but we ought to narrow down what specifically it is, and can we find the compound that's specifically responsible and use that and minimize and maybe minimize those that are responsible for the side effects.
In other words, put that through a rigorous vetting process that it needs to go through.
Correct.
Yeah. Is marijuana addicting?
It is. There's very good evidence that says that at least 30 to 40% of 30% of individuals who use marijuana on a heavy basis will become addicted, develop a cannabis use disorder, and that's much more likely to happen in teenagers and people who start marijuana use before age 18.
And when one of these individuals who's addicted to marijuana stops, what can you tell us about the withdrawal symptoms?
Well, there are significant withdrawal symptoms. Basically, what's generally reported are irritability, sleepiness, decreased appetite, anxiety, and the biggest thing about drug withdrawal symptoms is drug craving, wanting the drugs back. Marijuana, like all drugs, works with the central nervous system and they work to a large degree to stimulate our pleasure sensing mechanisms in our brain. And if you get those stimulated recurrently through ways that aren't appropriate, you're going to crave that pleasure hit.
Dr. Robert Hoffman is our guest here today on Crosstalk, and our topic today, marijuana use, detrimental to youth. We'll talk more about youth here a little bit later, but does not the medicinal use of marijuana often propel states to later legalize the recreational use of it?
Well, that's the way many states have gone. And the country as a whole. California was the first to legalize it medically, and they did it long before. Eventually, they brought it about recreationally. Colorado did both at about the same time. My own state of Ohio had medical marijuana for a long time, and then through a referendum process, legalized it about 2 years ago. And so, I think it takes the medical use seems to take away the stigmata of the use of it in general, and then we go down that approach, yes.
Yeah, the camel's nose gets in the tent.
Correct.
Yeah. What message is sent to youth when marijuana is legalized by a state?
Well, I think there's very clear. If it's legal, then it must not be all that bad, because they're saying it's not bad. And I think you see that if you look at perceptions of marijuana use and its reverse effects. They're from the 1990s till now, the perceived risks of marijuana by people in the United States have gone down pretty dramatically. Though it's interesting, the interesting thing is in states that have legalized it, some are after legalization, some youth are actually seeing the fact that there's no risk to the number of youth are seeing no risk to marijuana is actually decreasing as they're potentially seeing more adverse effects from people using it. Yeah.
So, and many do. They argue that the use of marijuana is low risk, that it's relatively harmless, and I'm not hearing you agree with that statement.
Oh, absolutely not.
Do you believe marijuana, or is there evidence that marijuana is a gateway drug to even more harmful drugs?
Oh, yes. There have been several studies that have shown 2 to 3 to 4-fold increase in moving on from marijuana to opioids and other drugs in young adults and others. There's multiple studies have demonstrated that once you try, I think it's once you break, as you said, the camel's nose under the tent. Once you let the camel in, well, this one worked, made me feel pretty good, so maybe I ought to go on to try the next one.
Yeah. Well, friends, you're listening to Crosstalk here on VCY America. We're talking today with Dr. Robert Hoffman, and recently has updated a report entitled Marijuana Use Detrimental to Youth. We're going to be taking a quick break here on Crosstalk, and when we come back, we're going to discuss the impact of marijuana upon the brain, upon mental illness. We'll look how it impacts people on a physical basis as well. And certainly the growing concern, even coming from the U.S. Secretary of Transportation here as it relates to the number of people, drivers in motor vehicle crashes, seeing a high percentage of these who are deceased finding THC, that's the psychoactive component of marijuana, in their system. We'll be back in just 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation researcher with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, when the Ice Age happened, was the Earth just covered in snow like one big snowball?
Not at all, Chris. But there is a lot of evidence that the ice sheets, which started up in Canada, did come down into the U.S., but they didn't cover the entire globe at all. Actually, the Ice Age wasn't a time of bitter cold either. The summers were probably colder, such that the ice and snow which fell during the winter did not melt, but the winters were probably warmer on average than today. Today, if it gets really cold, it doesn't snow much because the cold air can't hold much moisture. The warmer the air, the more the moisture, the more the snow. And that's what's needed for an ice age. Just such a combination of factors would have happened right after the flood, essentially caused by the flood. By the way, that's the flood mentioned back in Genesis.
For more on the foundational principles set forth in Genesis, visit us on the web at www.icr.org.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Marijuana use detrimental to youth. Our topic today, Dr. Robert Hoffman is with us today. He's professor of pediatrics at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and Nationwide Children's Hospital, and has just updated a report on this very matter, and certainly thought it worthy to come on and share this with our listeners today. Dr. Hoffman, as the studies have come out here in marijuana, and again, you're saying this has not been properly vetted even for a medical use, but how does marijuana impact the brain? That's been something that's been observable. How does marijuana impact the brain?
Well, I think it's the biggest, the THC and the cannabinoids and attack, or no, I shouldn't say attack, but interact with what are natural cannabinoid receptors in our brain. We have natural cannabinoids. They're designed, they do a variety of functions, signal things regarding memory and pleasure, and they also play a role in the development of neural connectivity and neuroplasticity. And it's particularly an important problem in youth because the full adult connections in the brain depends on its connectivity and the interactions between different parts of the brain in order for us to think properly and to use reason so that we understand that this risk, that this particular the pleasures of this particular behavior aren't worth the risks of the behavior and the dangers of it, and to be able to perform complex tasks. And THC, particularly in the teenagers, has been well shown on MRI what are called functional MRI studies, and magnetic resonance spectroscopy have demonstrated that the neural connectivity is impaired in adolescents who use THC and use marijuana. Mm-hmm. And this leads to the fact that they can't perform memory tasks as well, that they can't chronically reason as well as they should. And interestingly, these problems persist. Even if you if you've used marijuana before 18, these problems persist even long after 18. That you just don't do it. It just doesn't. Well, there was a New Zealand study that basically showed tested IQ at age 13 and at age 38 in a series of patients, and found that those subjects who had had chronic marijuana use before age 18 had a drop in their IQ from age 18 to 38, while others did not.
Wow.
So,
I mean, that's a noticeable drop in IQ, and this would be teens and young adult users, and
right.
That is shocking. Is not the brain still developing in teens, even young adults?
Oh, yes. It's the brain is still developing till about, it's probably developing in all of us, but it's till age 25, it's still developing to a large extent.
And yet the users of marijuana, I mean, often start as a teenager or college-age youth.
Right. Correct.
So still developing at age 25. And just I want to point out as well, the impact. So somebody starts smoking marijuana and decides to stop, that the impact on their brain does not all of a sudden, refurbish itself when one stops. There's lingering effect.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, that was true. The decline in IQ was true even if you stopped marijuana. It continued at that time, and it's several other studies have looked at this. Basically cognitive function through a variety of tests, verbal memory, how well you process various activities, make executive decisions. If you've had early use of marijuana, it's not as good as those people throughout. And obviously that has significant, those types of functions are the things that are necessary to compete, to live in an adult world.
We keep hearing in our present society about the rise in mental illnesses that are taking place. Is there any link between the use of marijuana and mental illness?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely there is, and particularly in young males. There have been, particularly regarding schizophrenia, work in Sweden, several different studies in Sweden and the Scandinavian countries have shown a 2 to 3%, actually a 6 times greater risk of developing schizophrenia in Army recruits in Sweden who had used marijuana versus those who hadn't. A Danish study found a significantly higher rate, particularly for males, of almost 4 times higher rates of schizophrenia in those who have used marijuana at a younger age. They actually concluded that young males are particularly susceptible to the effects of cannabis on schizophrenia, and that 1/5 of the cases of schizophrenia among young males in Denmark may be prevented by averting cannabis use disorder.
Wow, that's significant. What about depression?
Depression is increased. It's not as much as schizophrenia, but it's about. Most of the studies have shown what we call hazard ratios of about 1.8 to 2, meaning it's about 1.8 to 2 times more likely in those who use marijuana than those who don't. One's as high as 2.5%.
And what about suicide and thoughts of suicide?
That's also increased. Generally the higher those who have used marijuana have higher rates of suicide and suicidal ideation.
And how does that connect? Does it give people a feeling of hopelessness or despair, or what triggers there to make them more suicidal?
That's a question I don't know that I can really answer. I think it's a matter of a variety of things, and it probably becoming dependent on the drug, and then that all leading to some of the other situations, depression, and then a downward spiral in terms of how it reflects how you perform in your daily life, less able to work, less able to get joy in other relationships, less able to feel success or accomplishment on your own tasks, just becoming a downward spiral.
So, okay, we addressed many areas of mental health. What about physical health? What are some of the ways that impacts one's physical health?
Well, again, there are several areas that it's been done. Specifically, it's been shown consistently that there are cardiovascular effects. There are higher rates of stroke and ischemic attacks and marijuana use have been reported. About not huge rates, relative risk of about 1.3, 1.2, though that is a 2-time greater risk of cardiovascular death. Ontario emergency room visits showing higher rates of morbidity and mortality in those who have cannabis use disorder. Interestingly, so there's clearly chronic cardiovascular effects and cardiovascular death in terms of cancer. Interestingly, again, males have actually been, the biggest cancer has not been lung cancer, but has been testicular cancer, and a particularly aggressive form of testicular cancer in males who are marijuana users.
Wow.
But there have been also other cancers as well. One European study concluded that cannabis should be considered a more potent carcinogen than either tobacco or alcohol.
Wow, wow. What about respiratory? Is the respiratory impacted?
Somewhat, the smoke. Interestingly, it's surprising those have not, the respiratory effects have not been necessarily as bad as many of the other things have been.
Okay.
I'm not quite, we may not just have enough data on that,
but the cardiovascular effect is more noticeable, even the impact upon cancers, testicular cancer, and other cancers.
Correct.
How does cannabis use impact pregnancy?
Well, there is a significant problem because you get all the cardiovascular risk, plus there's been also consistently shown that children born of mothers who use marijuana have disordered sleep cycle, memory problems, hyperactivity, increased low birth weight and prematurity. Their APGAR scores, which are the scores we use to assess generalized health at birth, are lower in mothers who use cannabis. And there's increased neonatal intensive care units, care use, and actually shorter breastfeeding, which is not bad. And then girls have actually been shown to have more aggressive behavior at 18 months if mom used cannabis. So there's a lot of things going on. And I guess not surprisingly, whether this is due to intrauterine cannabis use or due to home environment, children exposed to cannabis in utero are more likely to use cannabis as adults, young adults.
That's interesting. Can they be such where they are addicted to cannabis, even as a newborn or a child, that they have that propensity?
I don't know that we can really say that. I don't think there's enough data to give that answer. And as I say, it could be part of it. It could also be home environment leads to the use of cannabis. I don't think we really know.
Sure. And what about the developing of that child's brain?
Well, as I said, there are definitely behavioral changes. With changes in behavior, girls with more aggressive behavior, and as I already said, disordered sleep, memory problems, hyperactivity, all playing a role, all of which are going to affect school behavior and school performance and school learning.
Wow. Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. We're just a minute from the break. We'll be taking a break here momentarily, but we are talking today with Dr. Robert Hoffman. He's professor of pediatrics at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and Nationwide Children's Hospital. He has recently revised an important report titled Marijuana Use Detrimental to Youth. And I see it's available on the website for the American College of Pediatricians, which is acpeds.org. Again, that's AC, that stands for American College, and then PEDS, short for Pediatricians, American College of Pediatricians, acpeds.org. And then in the search engine, just put in the word marijuana, and you'll find not only this report, but some other alarming matters there as well. And this is just one of many, many issues that are covered by the American College of Pediatricians that you'll find very, very helpful. And again, they take a very adverse position on many issues that you would see promoted by the American Academy of Pediatricians. And certainly we appreciate the American College of Pediatricians and giving us a more balanced view on things that takes the politics out of it. We're up against a break. We'll quick take the break. I've got a few more questions. And friends, a little bit later, we'll give you opportunity to call in on the program as well, so be ready for that time. This is Crosstalk coming your way from the VCY American Network.
When the government uses COVID-19 edicts to restrict the gathering of the church, 3 pastors face the risk of imprisonment and fines. while courageously reopening their churches in a world filled with chaos and fear. The Essential Church documentary tells the true stories of 3 churches during 2020 lockdowns. Follow their journey as they take a stand in defiance of the government using scientific, legal, and biblical perspectives to uphold their positions. The Essential Church is available on DVD for a donation of $12, or the Essential Church set for a donation of $20. The set includes Blu-ray and a DVD, along with multiple bonus features including extended interview excerpts, teasers, trailers, and more. The set also comes with a companion 70-page full-color hardcover book, taking you behind the scenes of making this movie. Call VCY 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America, and friends, this is a real issue across our nation today, especially when you have the Secretary of Transportation speaking out on this recently, and the growing concern that is there. And often when a state goes that way of medicinal marijuana, it sounds so innocent. And again, it has not gone through the harsh vetting as other medications have by the FDA, and so much has been anecdotal. And there's would you agree, Dr. Hoffman, that there's kind of a politicizing of this issue as well?
Yeah, I think it is an interesting political issue, and it's one that has sort of hit from both sides. That has been, the liberal left. Whatever feels good, do it. It's helpful, and then the libertarian right that if it doesn't cause harm to other people, let people do whatever they want to do. Sort of actually co-merging together on those two, on the issue of marijuana, and you get both sides actually promoting its legalization and usage.
Yeah, and yet we do see it does harm others. This is actually landing many young people into emergency departments, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I've seen it. I've seen kids. We haven't said I've worked on this report for the American Academy of Pediatrics, but my primary interest in medicine is children with diabetes and type 1 diabetes, and I've seen it have kids who have diabetes who have ended up in the hospital because of chronic marijuana use, and then they don't take care of their diabetes, and it puts them actually in life-threatening situations because they're not caring for their diabetes the way they should.
My. And just users, I've seen sometimes reports coming out of Colorado in the emergency department there, and it's not too flattering at all.
Yeah. I think the other thing we're seeing in Ohio and stuff, which we haven't touched on, is the use of hemp products, which we typically think of hemp as making rope, but much of hemp also has THC in it, and there are now a lot of quote-unquote hemp products that are sold for adults, that are sold as gummies and chewing and candies and stuff that little kids end up eating and getting a marked overdose of these things because it just looks like a candy. And then we've had children admitted across the country with THC overdoses and significant health problems because they've gotten into these quote-unquote hemp products, or even some of the candies, the gummies and stuff that are manufactured as part of the marijuana usage.
Well, let me ask you a question about the medical community. I mean, your colleagues, doctors, pediatricians, do they have a handle on this issue?
I think we know it's not. It's bad, and it's in terms of showing up in the emergency rooms and hospitalizations. I think we may have some of the same. I think we know that the medical approval of medical use of marijuana is not straightforward. That it's not a straightforward benefit. That it hasn't been benefited. But I think we probably also have some of the same political and divides that are here and that are here elsewhere, I think most of us would say it's probably not a great thing to do.
You actually recommend that pediatricians give guidance to parents of preteens and to teens themselves regarding the risk of marijuana. Address that issue with us, if you would.
Well, I think this is an area that is really critical because, as we've said, the current social media responses on marijuana are all generally favorable. They say it's a low-risk drug. We see it on the news all the time. It's a low-risk drug. It's been legalized, so it must not be particularly high risk. But there's actually data that says teens want people to talk to them about it, that they want them to discuss the pros and I say pros and cons because I think say that in everything, but discuss the cons of what the use is. Explain these facts that it does impair acutely. It impairs cognitive function. It impairs ability to, as you've already alluded to, it impairs driving ability and safety. Clearly, we've learned in many ways to have some of these talks regarding alcohol and its danger. Not that we've by any way, shape, or form eliminated alcohol as a significant problem for our teenagers, but most of us have learned to talk about alcohol with our teenagers and to explain the risks and that it's not safe to use on a routine basis, and particularly with driving and everything else. That has gotten out there, but the same data regarding marijuana isn't there, isn't in the general media.
Friends, I'd like to open our phone lines. You no doubt have questions for Dr. Hoffman here today. Our phone number to Crosstalk is 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. And Dr. Hoffman, just to circle back to where we started with this interview today, I saw this article from Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, and he stated in early October 2025 that 41.9% of drivers involved in a fatal accidents in a large Ohio county tested positive for marijuana use. He said the continued push in the U.S. to legalize the drug, he used the word, it's dangerous. And yet I saw an article, too, on Fox News reporting in middle of October that the Trump administration is strongly considering loosening the restrictions on marijuana. And I'm only guessing as a pediatrician, that must concern you.
Well, it really is a problem. It's one of those, and I hate to say it, it's one of those almost catch-22 positions where you're somewhat stuck either way. The continued legalization of it makes it more vulnerable. Yet we've stopped really enforced, even in those places where it's illegal, and there's only really 4 states where it's still completely illegal at this point. Though federally, it's still a controlled substance. It's still not supposed to be used. So, in that sense, all the states where it's been legalized are doing it against the recommendations of the federal government and federal law. So you've got a dichotomy between the two of what's going on. Legally, I think it's a very tough question. I surely don't think it should be legalized, but I understand. What do you do when basically everybody's ignoring the law to begin with?
Well, I guess there's a thing called enforcement, isn't there? And friends, seriously, you think about impaired driving, and how many times have I seen the news reports on wrong-way drivers going that they're impaired, too much alcohol, too much of this. But when you have 41.9% of drivers involved in fatal vehicle accidents and to see it testing positive for marijuana use, really ought to cause us to ask questions here as a society and say, are we headed in the right direction? Are we? Is it a good thing that states are legalizing this and making this available? And we see that once the state does this, that the age decreases for its use and the trying of marijuana by young people and the whole impact upon the brain of a child that is still developing. And I'm talking teenagers. I'm talking 20 and 21 and 22-year-olds. So, doctor, I mean, there is clear warning that this has not only the psychological aspect to it, but the physical aspect as well, and it ought to concern us.
Yeah, almost definitely it ought to concern us, and we need to. That's why it really needs to be a group. The pediatricians need to be willing to talk about it, and unfortunately, a lot of us pediatricians, at least I'm of an older generation. I can't say what is necessary. I don't know as much about what's being heard today. We didn't discuss marijuana in my residency and my training. It was out there. We didn't discuss it. You just went on your way, and therefore we didn't learn to discuss it with our patients. We didn't just learn to discuss it with the families or how to help them deal with it, and that's clearly got to change.
We've got Greg calling from Minnesota. Greg, you're on the air.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Well, first of all, I'd like to say it was 30 years ago that God delivered me from drugs and alcohol. And from my experience, and I certainly believe that, marijuana is a gateway drug. I started out with alcohol, went to marijuana and a lot of other drugs. Yeah. And there is a progression because it's a matter of looking for sometimes a more of a high, a better high or whatever, And it does become a progression. Yeah. Well, that's from my experience, anyhow.
Thank you, Greg. And Doctor, that's what you mentioned. They need something that's going to give a greater high or a longer high, and so one progresses. And he said, okay, for him it was alcohol to marijuana, and alcohol also has impacted that same aspect.
Oh, I think that's definitely true. From a Christian and religious standpoint, I would say all of us have something that we're looking to fill into our lives in place of our relationship to Christ. That we're supposed to have. We were created to have a relationship to Christ, and if we don't have that relationship, we're going to try to plug something else into it.
Yeah, indeed. Let's go to Kim from Chandler, Arizona. Kim, you're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. Okay, you might not like what I'm going to say, but I definitely believe that alcohol is the gateway drug. I mean, I started smoking marijuana when I was 15. I'm 63. I know a lot of us that still smoke it, and I've always had a good job, made money, and I think a lot of it is people are like that anyway, if they're lazy and all of that. But my comment is I just think that we should put it where it belongs, and I really do believe that alcohol starts the whole thing.
Okay, thank you, Kim. And yeah, you mentioned we called it a gateway drug, and the previous caller to you also said alcohol and marijuana, both gateway, and so thank you for the comments. Any response here, Doctor?
Well, I guess I would say that, certainly they're both there. But I would say, clearly there are people who we said not everybody who uses marijuana becomes addicted to it. Not everybody who uses marijuana develops cannabis use disorder. Not everybody who uses marijuana develops psychiatric or schizophrenia or depressive concerns. I think the physical concerns regarding cancer risks and stuff are still always there, and the risks on the cardiovascular system are always there. So not everybody does it. The fact that not everybody does it doesn't mean that there's that the risks aren't there for a large number of people.
Indeed. Well, we're up against a break. We'll take more of your calls in the final segment here as well. Dr. Robert Hoffman with us, back on Crosstalk in 1 minute.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Sadly, replacement theology is running rampant through Christian circles all around the world. It's the belief that God is done with the nation of Israel. And yet we know the Bible tells us that his mercies to them are irrevocable. He will finish his plan with them. But yet, many reject that. They say the church has replaced Israel. No, that's not in the Bible. And in fact, did you know that in the New Jerusalem that comes down out of heaven, as described in Revelation chapter 21, it says that the walls of the 12 gate towers that are in the walls around the New Jerusalem, that are part of the new heaven and the new earth, have the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And then it goes on to say that the 12 foundations have the names of the 12 apostles who gave us the foundation of the church. Here you see God's distinct program for the Jews who become believers and the church. God's word is true.
Marijuana use detrimental to youth. Our guest has just updated a report on that. You'll find it at ACPEDS, American College of Pediatricians, and put that right at .org and put that into their search engine, the word marijuana. You'll find it come right up there. Dr. Robert Hoffman with us today. He's professor of pediatrics at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and Nationwide Children's Hospital. Our lines are packed. Let's go next to... holding the longest is Abby in Mesa, Arizona. Hi, Abby, you're on the air.
Thank you. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I'm 74 years old, and in my 20s, I had 10 years of all the drugs that were around California, the whole West Coast. Not the hard ones, but certainly marijuana. And all the psychedelic drugs. I did that in my 20s.
Sure.
And I became extremely against it because I wanted to be a singer, which I am. I've been teaching the performing arts for 50 years, but then I became a Christian 32 years ago, and that completely changed my desire for it. But until I had the Holy Spirit in my life, I couldn't really let go of the desire for the high. But see, to me, my twin brother has been involved in it for 55 years. My daughter, I don't know how long, probably 20 years. And I'm very against it to the hilt because marijuana to me is way more dangerous than anything because it's insidious. Nobody knows what it does to your personality. I have a master's degree in mental health, too. Nobody knows what it does to you, the fact that you think that you are a victim, you become paranoid. A lot of people think it's a gateway drug. That's not necessarily true. It could be the last drug you take, but it's still not it's not so, what do you say, benign, as people say.
Sure,
because it changes your whole perspective of everything you see in life. And my brother, for instance, my wonderful...
I tell you what, I don't have time for more illustrations of it, but I'm going to have our guest comment on it because we got a lot of people lined up behind you here, Abby. Go ahead, Doctor.
Well, I agree with everything she said, and I think in light of, as we said in the break, in light of the last caller, just because one person doesn't have adverse effects on it, which doesn't mean that the adverse effects aren't there. And I think that's what we need to be aware of, that it is legalizing it and promoting it through social media and stuff is making it seem like it's not a harmful drug, and it clearly is.
Abby, we appreciate your call. We wish we had more time, but others are lined up here, too. John is next in Milwaukee. You're on the air, John.
Hello, thank you. Quick statement and then a question. The statement was I had a radio station in Illinois years ago. They did a man-on-the-street interview after Illinois legalized marijuana. Oh, everybody was, this is wonderful, this is all good. One person finally had some common sense and said, why would you put a carcinogen in your body? And then my question to the doctor is, how are the students who are 19 and 20 and 21 years old and know everything, how are they finding your study. Thank you for the program. Thank you. I'll listen for your answer.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think the answer to that is we're all willing to place our risk-benefit. The first part is place our risk-benefit ratios in different places. We see that with simply tobacco, and the tobacco is still out there and used heavily, and people seem to get some benefit out of it that they're willing to take the risk on. I'm not sure that's the appropriate.
Right.
And in terms of how young people are reacting to this particular report, I can't actually answer it because hasn't been out long enough. I think we're trying to get the main goal of the American College of Pediatricians is to raise awareness both for the youth and in particular for pediatricians so they start talking to their patients about it.
Indeed. Kevin in Richland Center, Wisconsin, you're on the air.
Well, thanks for the program, Jim. How much is THC playing a role in this violence in Chicago that Trump seems to have to get under control? In Illinois, there were some concerned people in Illinois you had on your station years ago before Illinois legalized it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the whole aspect of the university age system is really in quite an upheaval here, Dr. Hoffman.
Yeah, obviously that's a question I have no way of answering.
Right.
I think as I said earlier, I think a lot of these. I think you will find that a lot of the young adult males with schizophrenia who are completing a lot of violent acts. Clearly, schizophrenia plays a role in a lot of the violent acts and group shootings and mass shootings that we have, and marijuana clearly increases the risk of schizophrenia, particularly in young adult males who are the ones most likely to do those types of behaviors.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll squeeze one last call in. Lily in Tucson, Arizona, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you. I am truly concerned, as you are, how it is affecting the youth. Mm-hmm. And I believe that when grandparents, such as I, who was delivered 40 years ago, can just be honest and have those conversations with their children and grandchildren and say probably the most important danger, I believe, is the spiritual danger, because I believe it opens up, and I know this for a fact, minds to the occult. And we've always called drugs, the word pharmakeia is from witchcraft, so there's a connection. But I will tell you, the only thing that saved me was reading the Bible, and the Word of God certainly does renew our minds. And so the spiritual connection, aside from what I believe you guys are talking about, all of the other issues, is so critical to let people know, and especially now marijuana is so much stronger.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you for raising that issue, and you've got a great point there, Doctor.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better. You know, when it comes down to everything, most of our issues are spiritual issues and a rebellion against God.
Indeed. Well, Dr. Hoffman is with us today, Professor of Pediatrics, Ohio State University College of Medicine and Nationwide Children's Hospital, has just updated this and revised his report, Marijuana Use Detrimental to Youth. And, friends, you can go to the website acpeds.org. That's the American College of Pediatricians, and put marijuana in the search engine. You'll find it there. Dr. Hoffman, thank you so much for being with us.
No, my pleasure. I hope that we can dispel some of the myths that are out there.
Indeed. And friends, again, check out the report. And as Dr. Hoffman said, we need to have these conversations, parents and children and grandparents and pediatricians and those in the medical community. And certainly to point this out, again, it's very tragic. Over 40% of deceased drivers in vehicle crashes over the past 6 years in this Ohio County tested positive for THC. God bless you, friends.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.